Hello, everyone. My name is Joseph Banks. I hope you're all doing well. Today, we're going to be reading some articles by the World Socialist website, or the WSWS.org. I'll be posting links to these articles in the description, as well as the WSWS donation page and the campaign page for Joseph Kishore, who is the current National Secretary of the SEP, Socialist Equality Party, and the current presidential candidate for 2024. If you like what I'm doing, please consider subscribing and leaving a like or a comment. It really helps me out, and it gives me valuable feedback. And with that out of the way, let's go ahead and get started. The first article that we're going to be reading is titled, "Following Bipartisan Vote, Biden Signs $1.2 trillion Budget Bill Devoted to War, Genocide," by Jacob Cross, and this was posted 15 hours ago. After a bipartisan vote in the House Friday, and then again in the Senate on Saturday, U.S. President Joe Biden signed a series of spending bills that included the largest appropriation for the military in U.S. history. The centerpiece of the $1.2 trillion budget bill, signed into law by the war criminal president, is the massive $825 billion earmarked for the Department of Defense. This figure represents the largest ever military budget in U.S. history, topping last year's record by $27 billion, and $100 billion more than in the fiscal year of 2020. The passage of the bills, demanded by Biden before he signed it Saturday, underscores that the central priority of the Biden administration and the U.S. ruling class as a whole is imperialist war. Out of the $1.2 trillion appropriated by Congress and signed into law by Biden, the vast majority of it, over 70%, is earmarked for military spending. Minutes after signing the spending bill, Biden demanded that the House take up the National Security Supplemental Bill previously passed by the Senate, which includes over $60 billion for the Ukrainian military, over $14 billion for Israel, and billions more for Taiwan and future conflict with China. "But I want to be clear," wrote Biden on Saturday, "Congress's work isn't finished. The House must pass the bipartisan National Security Supplemental to advance our national security interests." Biden also demanded passage of the bipartisan border security agreement, which he called the toughest and fairest reforms in decades to ensure we have the policies and funding needed to secure the border. The far-right border bill would virtually eliminate the right to asylum, greatly expand the border police, enlarge the border wall, and grant the president new executive powers to shut down ports of entry if certain low thresholds of migrants seeking asylum were met. The spending bills signed on Saturday, which are almost 6 months late, reflecting the ongoing political crisis in the heart of global imperialism, also provide funding for the rest of the year for the Departments of Homeland Security, Labor and Health, and Human Services, as well as other agencies. Included is funding for Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, to expand its facilities to 42,000 detention beds, an increase of about 8,000. The bill also provides funding for 2,000 more Border Patrol agents, bringing the total number to some 22,000. While increasing the repressive state apparatus, the bill cuts funding by 20% to non-governmental organizations that provide social services for immigrants. In a statement released following the passage of the package in the House, Republicans boasted that the spending bill represents the first overall cut to non-defense, non-VA spending in almost a decade. In their statement, Republicans on the Appropriations Committee emphasized that countering the People's Republic of China was a top priority. To this end, the bill doubles military financing to Taiwan from $150 to $300 million. It provides another $400 million for the Countering the People's Republic of China Influence Fund. Defense News reported the bill includes $33.5 billion to build 8 ships, while allocating billions more towards the construction of 86 F-35 and 24 F-15EX fighter jets, as well as 15 KC-46A tankers. Another $2.1 billion is earmarked for the Army's long-range hypersonic weapon and the Navy's conventional prompt strike hypersonic weapons system. Defense News noted the bill also provides multi-year contracts for 6 advanced missile systems: the Naval Strike Missile, the Guided Multiple Launch Rocket System, the Patriot Advanced Capability 3, the Long-Range Anti-Ship Missile, the Joint Air-to-Surface Standoff Missile, and the Advanced Medium-Range Air-to-Air Missile. Breaking Defense reported that in addition to multi-year contracts for advanced missile systems, the bill provides Department of Defense officials latitude to negotiate multi-year contracts for the Columbia, the Virginia-class submarines. While the Virginia-class is focused on anti-ship, anti-submarine warfare, the Columbia-class is slated to replace the Ohio-class nuclear strike platform and will be equipped with 16 missile tubes for launching Trident II D5 ballistic missiles. In addition to preparing for war with China, the bipartisan bill fully funds our annual security commitment to the Israeli government. This includes $3.3 billion through the State Department, while another $500 million is earmarked for Israel through the Pentagon budget. At the same time, the law prohibits any taxpayer funding from going to the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, UNRWA, which is the largest humanitarian agency that we are funding. It eliminates funding for the United Nations Commission of Inquiry against Israel. This includes barring funding for the United Nations Human Rights Council until the council takes significant steps to remove Israel as a permanent agenda item. It also blocks funding for the United Nations International Commission of Inquiry on the occupied Palestinian territory, including East Jerusalem and Israel. While the bill places no restrictions on the U.S. money to Israel, more than 160 days and over 40,000 bodies into the U.S.-Israeli genocide, it does require the Secretary of State to submit a report within 90 days, detailing steps taken by the Palestinian Authority to counter incitement of violence against Israelis and to promote peace and coexistence with Israel. Give me a break. The legislation also compels the Palestinian Authority not to initiate or support any international criminal court inquiry against Israeli nationals for alleged crimes against Palestinians, if it wants any economic support from the United States. Support for this genocidal war bill among both big business parties was overwhelming. Both the House and Senate votes were bipartisan affairs, with the House voting 286 to 34 on Friday, followed by the Senate voting 75 to 24 in favor early Saturday morning. In both chambers, the Democratic Party provided the bulk of the votes, with all but 22 Democrats in the House voting in favor, with only 2 senators whose caucus with the Democrats voting against the war bill. The vast majority of the 112 House Republicans and 22 Senate Republicans who voted against the bill did so on the grounds that it did not include sufficient cuts in social spending or provide enough money for the military. The only Democratic senator who voted against the bill was Michael Bennet of Colorado. In a statement released after the vote, Bennet explained that he objected on the grounds that it did not provide enough funding for the U.S.-NATO war against Russia and Ukraine. Bennet claimed incorrectly that the bill did not provide any financial support for Ukraine, adding that they are running out of bullets and artillery. In fact, in order to facilitate fighting Russia to the last Ukrainian, the bill earmarks $300 million for the Ukrainian Security Assistance Initiative, which, according to Defense News, allows the Pentagon to place contracts for new equipment to send to Kyiv. In a statement posted on Twitter/X, Socialist Equality Party presidential candidate Joseph Kishore denounced the genocide package, writing, "Both the Democrats and Republicans are committed to providing unlimited resources to fund an escalating global war that risks nuclear annihilation, while there is supposedly no money for basic social services." The vote, Kishore added, expresses the essential class interests defended by the two parties. The ruling class is waging war abroad, and it is waging war at home. These are two sides of the same war, the war of the capitalist ruling elite to defend its profits and wealth. And that is the end of our first article. It's pretty horrifying, the amount of money that the U.S. government is willing to spend on pure murder and death and destruction. Let's move on to our second article here that we have today. It is titled, "Israel to Force Cancer Patients Being Treated in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv Back to Gaza" by Benjamin Mateus. And this was posted about 9 hours ago. On Wednesday, CNN reported that Israel's Supreme Court has temporarily suspended the government plan to return a group of 22 Gazan Palestinians being treated in hospitals in East Jerusalem and Tel Aviv that include 5 newborn babies, their mothers, and cancer patients deemed in remission, including their companions, back to Gaza amidst the ongoing genocidal campaign that has seen 32,000 people killed, nearly 7,500 injured, and hundreds of thousands on the brink of starvation. The patients and their families were to board buses on Thursday headed for the Kerem Shalom border, crossing into Rafah, had it not been for the petition to the courts written by the Israeli nonprofit organization Physicians for Human Rights Israel, PHRI. In what amounts to a stay of execution, the spokesman for PHRI said, "Returning residents to Gaza during a military conflict and a humanitarian crisis is against international law and poses a deliberate risk to innocent lives. all the more so when it concerns patients who may face a death sentence due to insanitary conditions and hunger, along with the unlikely availability of medical care. According to the Israeli Defense Ministry, COGAT, Coordinator of Government Activities in the Territories, they've been attempting to obtain from the hospitals a list of patient names who are deemed as no longer requiring inpatient medical treatment and to be returned to Gaza. This does not take into account that every one of these patients needs comprehensive outpatient follow-up care and complex treatments and resources that are no longer existent, as the entire infrastructure to support the 2 million plus population has essentially been razed to the ground. Dr. Fadi Atrash, who heads the Augusta Victoria Hospital in Jerusalem, which treats Gazan cancer patients, told CNN on the COGAT policies, "It's not our call at the end of the day, and this is really frustrating. We have not been able to help people in Gaza since the beginning of the war. As doctors, this is our daily feeling, that we are not able to do anything." In the context of nearly 6 months of continuous shelling, sniper attacks, summary executions, wholesale destruction of the healthcare apparatus, the bureaucratic decree of these 24 or so frail and doubly traumatized people to vacate their sanctuary and return to their war-torn, non-existent homes speaks to the complete depravity and inhumanity of Israel's genocidal policies against a people that has been occupied for more than 75 years under the most onerous conditions. Such moments provide a social microscope into the inner workings of fascism's hypocrisy and cruel banalities. Speaking with a CNN journalist, a tearful Nima Abu Garara, who was transported to Jerusalem for a high-risk complicated twin pregnancy she gave birth on October 5th, said, "If I go back with the twins, where do I go with them? Where would I get diapers and milk? Gaza is not the same anymore." Of the impending invasion, she added, "I might go back and then they invade Rafah. I'll be the one responsible for anything that harms them. I was dying when I came here and stayed with them here to protect them." Indeed, this week, news outlets confirmed that several children have already perished from starvation as famine lays siege across northern Gaza and threatens areas in the south. The Gaza Ministry of Health said that as of March 19th, 2024, at least 27 children had died from malnutrition and dehydration. Those are clearly gross underestimates. Contextualizing this impending famine, an Australian Broadcasting Corporation report remarked on the plight of 2-year-old Watan al-Aswad, who, since Israel's onslaught in October, has lost half her body weight at 7 kilograms, 15.4 pounds. With protruding eyes and a gaunt face, the once boisterous toddler is confined to her hospital bed, unable to sit or walk, let alone lift her arms. A healthy weight for such a child is around 15 to 18 kilograms, 33 to 40 pounds. In northern Gaza, about 210,000 people were in Phase 5, which refers to catastrophic hunger. UNICEF also remarked that 335,000 children under the age of 5 in the Gaza Strip are at a high risk of severe malnutrition. 1 in 4 households is facing famine. Cases of respiratory infections and diarrheal diseases are in the hundreds of thousands. The internal food supply is utterly depleted, and the entire population remains reliant on the supply trucks that Israel allows in, a fraction of what is required to sustain the population. UNICEF Executive Director Catherine Russell recently told reporters, "The speed at which this catastrophic child malnutrition crisis in Gaza has unfolded is shocking, especially when desperately needed assistance has been at the ready just a few miles away. We have repeatedly attempted to deliver additional aid, and we have repeatedly called for the access challenges we have faced for months to be addressed. Instead, the situation for children is getting worse with each passing day. Our efforts in providing life-saving aid are being hampered by unnecessary restrictions, and those are costing children their lives. Even the World Bank has admitted that without urgent action, without widespread deaths from starvation, would be imminent over the next 2 months. According to their analysis, of the 2.3 million Gazans, 1.1 million people were in the highest risk category, and a further 854,000 in the preceding lower level, people in emergency. Should the call for a ceasefire materialize and the Rafah invasion be postponed, the famine will continue to prosecute Israel's war on the population. As for those requiring cancer treatment, with the scant resources that include healthcare workers being solely directed at treating the most urgent of trauma cases that pour into the remaining but barely functioning hospitals, such matters assume a hopeless irrelevance regardless of the fate that awaits the untreated. Indeed, the social capacity that requires a screening, diagnosing, and then treating of malignant malignancies also means the existence of social infrastructure that has attained the ability to function in a deeply organized concert manner that prioritizes life as an objective goal. It is the end product of the highest social achievements and, therefore, the first casualty when inequity, mass poverty, and war consume the entire social infrastructure, especially for the working class, who rely on these services that provide them with a sense that their well-being is a social priority. In the November 2023 report published in Cureus, titled "A Double Battle, Fighting Cancer in the Shadows of Conflict in Gaza," the author wrote, "The situation for patients with cancer in the Gaza Strip is deeply concerning. According to the Palestinian Ministry of Health, the cancer incidence rate in the region was 91.3 cases per 100,000 people in 2021. In the same year, there were 1,952 new cancer diagnoses and 610 deaths attributed to the disease. This adds to the cumulative burden of cancer in the area, with a 5-year prevalence of cases reaching 10,566 by 2020. These statistics are set against the backdrop of significant challenges for cancer care in the Gaza Strip, where the ongoing conflict and displacement has led to catastrophic health conditions for patients with cancer. The situations for Gazans with cancer was already harrowing, with almost 40% of applicants for permission to travel for treatment being denied even before the beginning of large-scale conflicts in October 2023. Despite 1,800 new cancer cases each year, the health system in Gaza lacked 60% of the appropriate pharmaceuticals and treatment necessary to offer the standard of care. Unsurprisingly, cancer survival has fallen by 50% in a decade's time, 2008 to 2017, according to the World Health Organization. However, these statistics belie the realities, as a real comparison would require a comparison to other countries. For instance, while breast cancer impacts 20% of all cases in Palestine, these patients have a 5-year survival of 65% compared to wealthier regions where rates stand at approximately 90%. Even these horrific issues have become moot in the face of Israel's fascist policies, and the fate of the 22 people waiting a decision by the Supreme Court of Israel is assuredly sealed. And that is the end of our second article that we're reading today. Thank you all for joining me. I will see you guys in the next video.